For this week's unboxing, we're having a look at one of the new Alfa model kits. This one is for the Alfa Romeo Giulia Quadrifoglio, a kit that I have been looking forward to for a very long time and probably would not have been released by any of the regular kit manufacturers, so luckily Alfa Model is out there creating these kits that we're all after. Now of course the price point is a bit high, however it's better than nothing. So let's have a look at the box itself and then check out the contents. So just like all of the Alfa model kits, the chassis itself is pretty bare bones. Now normally there would be a partial engine or at least oil pan or something like that on here, a bit of an exhaust here in the middle, and then probably the muffler here in the rear. With this one, it is simple, plain, and flat. Now for me personally, not a really big deal. These kits are on the expensive side and not obtainable for everyone, so when you do sum up the money to pay for this, then this could be considered a bit of a letdown. Now again, I personally don't care, and probably if they would go for a fully detailed engine and chassis of pieces that will never be seen once the model is assembled and set on its four wheels, then these kits would probably be at least 50% more expensive, and I think they made the right decision to not detail it as much, and in this case maybe a bit of a wrong decision to not detail it at all, but then again that is all to personal preference. For me, again, not a big deal. So from parts that won't be seen to parts that will be seen, there is a massive difference to be shown immediately. The interior is fully detailed and pretty much everything has been taken into consideration and probably added in here too. As you can see, some of the pedals are in here and already have details on them, and you probably will have some parts on the actual sprue for the photo etch sheet to make them even more detailed or add to them even more. Then there is the position for the seats, a bit of the center console, which will probably get another piece on top of it, and then the rear seat, which is molded in, and for me that is a bit of a letdown as it makes it a bit harder to paint it, and specifically if you want to add some carpeting here, you need to add more masking and time to do that, of course, but nonetheless the seats are here, they are molded in, so we'll have to deal with that. They are incredibly well done. They have very crisp lines for the patterns in the seats, so to speak, on both the bottom and at the top or rear, and then also have some sort of stitching detailing here, which is pretty cool. You don't really see that all that often. Then the rear parcel shelf, again, another nice detail piece. This will be pretty highly visible from the rear window, so they've taken some time to detail that out nicely as well. So instead of getting sprues, we're actually just getting bags of parts with this, as these are resin cast and not the plastic injection from the regular kits that you might be used to. So they simply just make a part one at a time, and it can be popped into a small little bag like this. In this one, there is a lot of stuff for the interior, so let's check it out and see what's inside. Let's just start with one of the door panels. This one is, as usual with these Alfa models, as they do take a lot of time and attention for the interior parts, super well done. It has crisp detailing here where the door handles are, some of the buttons front and rear, of course also the speaker, and then the armrest on both of the door panels too. Looks really well done and should be a breeze to paint up and detail out. Same, of course, for the other side, identical, but then in a mirrored image. So like I said, the center console is a separate piece, and just like all the other parts, incredibly well done. On the rear section here, you can see some of the vents that are molded in, but have some super sharp detailing, along with all the other sharp edges all around. And then there are also some detailed buttons here in the center, and then another separate piece to be added later for the gears, or the transmission, or the gear selector, or whatever you want to call it. Now the rear seats are molded into the main piece for the interior. The fronts, of course, are molded separately, but that doesn't mean that they are lacking any detail. Just like all the other parts, both front and rear are detailed. In the Giulia, you get the option, or maybe even it is standard, to have this in a carbon fiber finish. So with all of the detailing shown here, that is pretty cool. As with the carbon fiber decal, it will only enhance it even more and make it look more authentic and cool. So just like on the rear seats, there is also a bit of a stitching pattern molded into the seats, and that same design here on the rear seats is pulled through to the front and also carried out very nicely with super sharp finishing. And then the final piece for the interior in this bag is the dashboard itself. The steering column is molded in. Normally this would be done as a separate piece, so pretty similar to other kits, but then just molded in. No idea why they've done it this time and not the others. Nonetheless, there is some additional detailing here on the sides, and these are pretty sure the holes for the actual indicators and the stalks that turn on some of the functions for the window wipers and other bits like that. Small bit of detailing here for some more buttons, and the rest looks pretty plain, as these of course are additional parts which need to be added to it just to make it a lot easier to paint it. Same goes here on top. There are some empty spaces, but these will be filled up with some separate parts. In this bag we also have two other pieces. I think this is the front splitter to go underneath the front bumper. A plain simple piece, but nice to have it separate, as you can have this opted in carbon fiber too, so that makes it a lot easier to just paint it or add some carbon decals to it. Then this rear diffuser is a piece of art by itself. It has a lot of nice fins, intricate shapes, and all sorts to it. Looks really nice, no imperfections in the molding and casting whatsoever to be found. Again, a couple of empty spaces, but there will be some exhaust tips to be put on here and some mesh grills to finish it all off. There is also a second bag included in the kit with all of the additional parts for detailing the interior. The wheels themselves, of course, get some discs and calipers behind it. Then there is some detail for inside the lighting on the rear and on the front. So let's just check out what's inside. So like I've shown, the chassis itself is nothing special, and the way the wheels are mounted is pretty much identical in all of these Alfa model kits. You could put a screw through it to mount the wheels to it, glue these in place on the chassis, and then there are some pre-positioned holes here for the calipers to be glued into, so they have the actual correct position. And then on this sprue there is also a small detail piece for in the center console with a couple of the buttons, and also the surround for the gear selector or gear shifter. So on the dashboard there are a couple of empty spaces, and these are some of the parts that will fill them up. These are of course the vents. You can just apply some decals to them or paint them very easily into the color they need to be, and that makes it a lot cleaner of an install without any funky masking that needs to be done. There is a small additional sprue here with the actual gear selector itself. Seems like this one is for the manual, which is a big plus point, as I really like to have a manual instead of an automatic if possible. Then there is the other one for the vents, the exhaust tips themselves, and even the handbrake calipers for on the rear. There is also a small other sprue with some more parts. I think this is the handbrake itself. Looks a bit small and flimsy, but no, this is not the handbrake. This is one of those stocks for on the steering column for the indicators or some of the other stuff that can be done with it. Some more buttons for the radio, I believe, and all the door handles are molded separately as well. And right here we also have the other stock for on the steering column. It broke off of the sprue, but no big deal. It just needs to be painted anyway and could then be glued in place. For the disc brakes and calipers, we have a center piece of resin and then some photo etch pieces, which I will show later, to go on top of either side to finish off the detailing on the disc. The center piece seems to be molded in this time, has some nice crisp detail on there, but not too much. And then this is one of the pieces for in the front bumper, I believe, around the main grille. And right here we have the grille itself, also very nicely done. You can see some of these holes already here for that piece to go on top of it and sit perfectly in position. And then for the taillights, we have the housings themselves, separate pieces, so it makes it a lot easier to paint them. It seems like they thought it through really well on this one and makes it a lot easier to have a super nice and crisp finish. So just like on the front, or just like on the rear, the front ones are molded separately too. These are the headlight housings. Have a couple of pieces missing in here for the additional details to go in there and finish it off and make it even cleaner. There are some grills here too for in the lower portion of the front bumper, and just like that center grill, these look amazing. So even though the discs themselves are pretty plain, they will be detailed further with some photo etch. The calipers themselves are already detailed straight out of the box and don't really need any additional parts. The front ones even have the pads already installed. You don't really see that all that often. The detailing on these is super sharp and the casting is very clean, so no real cleanup required both on the front or rear. There is another small sprue to finish off the interior, a couple of vents for in the dashboard, and even the antenna, the shark fin, for on the roof. And the final piece for the interior for now is the steering wheel. It has super nice panel lining all around, so you can decide to do this middle inner piece in carbon fiber and then the outer piece just in any color you'd like, or even have it painted in a two-tone. The side mirrors also very nicely done, just like all of the other parts. The panel lines are nice and clean, don't really need any touching up or additional detailing done to them, and the general shape is also super well done. I believe this is also another of those pieces for in the dashboard, super nice. And then finally for on the exterior in this one, these are the two side skirt pieces, also molded separately, as this is optional to be done in carbon fiber. Makes it a lot easier to have them as a separate piece. And then the rear wing, same story as these, separate to make it easier for it to be finished in carbon fiber or have it just painted in the body color, but that of course is all up to you. So the wheels come in two different sizes. Of course you have the fronts and the rears. They don't really differ all that much, but just the tiniest amount. This one is a little bit narrower. The detailing on both is done equally. It has a nice tire on it. The sidewall is clean, so no detailing or branding on there. The inside has a couple of the molds or the demolding pieces still on there. No big deal. It is on the inside anyway. The thread pattern super clean all around, and the detailing on the wheels is done very nicely too. However, the center piece here where the actual lug nuts go into seem a bit blunt and not as detailed as it should be. So maybe it's best to just drill these out and replace these with some separate parts for additional detail, as this itself doesn't really look all that great. There is a final little bag for some of the clear parts. These are the headlight and taillight lenses. All of them are cast in clear resin, and also some parts for the indicators, and maybe even some of the daytime running lights for in the headlights themselves. As you can see here, these are some of the round pieces, and these are some of these flat pieces that were missing in the actual part for the headlight bucket itself, but luckily they are included here. Makes it a lot easier to detail it out, and looks a lot more realistic than just simply painting it on with some silver paint. So if all of these parts by themselves weren't enough, there are some parts to detail them up even further. So for the interior, there is a small sprue with some of these belt buckle sets for the seat belts, and also a actual metal piece for the gear shifter. This is super cool. Makes it look so much better than actually having a resin piece, and it is a nice little detail to have in this. And then there are a couple of sprues with photo etch parts, and also a small set of decals with some of the emblems, and also some of these metal stickers for in the rear view mirrors on the side, and also on the interior rear view mirror. The photo etch pieces, as usual, they are plenty. So for the discs themselves, very nice detailing. It has all of the drilled holes in there, but not drilled through, so the backside is plain. This makes it a lot easier if you want to actually just glue them in place, and normally when they are completely drilled through, when you glue them, the glue seeps through all of these holes and makes it a bit of a mess. So with this being a closed back, it makes it a lot easier. A bit of panel line accent color, and this will look perfectly realistic. There are some grills for all around, a bit of mesh, some other detailing parts for the wipers. I believe this is for the pedals that I spoke about earlier, the shifter pedals behind the steering wheel, and also some license plates in actual 3D metal. So you could paint these up or just not paint them, as they look really cool as is, but that of course is all up to you. For on the side windows, this is some of the actual trim on the window piece themselves. It's simply painted black. So for the additional detailing, this will need to be glued on as well to finish it off fully. There is also a really big plaque here. I'm not going to be using this, but this is cool. If you're building it for someone, you can have it signed here. This of course has the model designation of the actual car, and it looks a lot cooler in a display box when this is included too. So it's a nice touch. One of the smaller sprues has some more meshes and other detail bits in there for the interior. I believe this is part of the center console, or the center part of the dashboard, where the actual navigation screen goes, on top of some of these speaker meshes for all round, and also some additional metal pieces for the rear view mirrors. But then again, these will be replaced with these one, as they look a lot nicer. For the seat belts, they have also included this here. This is a metal seat belt set. I personally am not going to be using these, as I simply don't really like the look, and I have actual fabric ones for these, but if you don't, this is a good touch to add. And then one of the final sprues is this one with some more badges here for the Q4, which are not used on the Quadrifoglio, so I'm not sure why they are in there. I believe these are the center caps for the wheels, and some other parts for the emblems front and rear, and of course the seatbelt stuff. And then finally, in this bag, we have a set of decals for some of the gauges, the Quadrifoglio logos all around, some more logos on the back. Then these are actual metal decals. Again, there is a Q4 logo not used on the Quadrifoglio, so I'm not sure why they included this at all, as it's not supposed to be on this car. Nonetheless, if you know it, just don't use it. It's not supposed to be here. The rest, of course, for the center parts of the wheels, and even for the front and rear logos. Now, I do have a sense that some of these are missing some paint, as this is fully finished, and the rest of them are not. So I'm not really sure what is going on there. So as usual with these Alfa model kits, in the older ones they had some vacuum formed plastic, which I actually preferred, even though it was harder to get them cut out and painted up. They installed a lot nicer as they had the curves in them already. With these ones it is a lot easier as they are pre-cut and pre-painted, so that is super sharp on all of them. However, they are flat pieces and need to be installed in a curve, and sometimes it doesn't really want to stay glued down all that well. So that is one of the pluses, and at the same time also one of the minuses of these kits, but is a pretty usual or standard thing to see with these lower production sort of handmade resin kits. So having built one of the earliest Alfa model kits a couple of years ago, and having seen a couple and built a couple more in the meantime, I can pretty much say this for certain: these kits seem to be improving every single time they bring out a new kit. The casting on all of the parts and in and exterior is getting better and better. All of the panel lines are crisper and crisper every single time. In the beginning, with the first couple of kits that I built, they needed a lot of cleanup and even rescribing, or just scribing them entirely as they were missing. And on this kit, everything is done to another level somehow. There are nice indications for where some of the badges need to go on the side. Some of the vents are detailed inside as well, just need to put the mesh piece on top. And of course these panel lines are super well done. Now it could need a little bit of cleanup here, as some of the mold piece is still stuck in this one. But then again, not a big deal. Just simply sand it out, maybe scribe them out a little deeper, but by the look of it, they will not need any rescribing whatsoever, as they are pretty much good to go straight out of the box. It just needs a little bit of sanding for the primer to stick to it. No other imperfections to be found so far. Even on the bottom side, usually it has a lot of nasty stuff left over from the molding, but it seems like they've cleaned that up themselves before sending out these kits. And just like some of the previous one, they also have a headliner in here already done and detailed.